Hi, I'm Howie,
And I'm Allie.
and this is the Opinionated Podcast.
It's opinionated.
Well, that's one person's opinion. This week we are discussing The Things They Carried by Timo'brien, but only the first chapter. But before that, just to give you a little bit of who we are and what we bring to the table for this podcast. This podcast is about discussing stories.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever you might find a story, whether it's a movie, TV show, comic book, short story, song, poem, whatever. If it's a story, we are liable to talk about it. Anything that we find interesting.
Liable.
Yeah. Aly is an award-winning screenwriter.
Mm-hmm. Produced as well. So there's a couple movies out that I've actually written.
Mm-hmm. I'm a historian, and a film buff. Really a story buff in general. But really, I love films, comic books. Just general nerddom, geekdom, stuff like that.
And he loves researching everything.
Yeah, anything that I find interesting, I'll just research it for no reason other than because I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. So he has lots of useless information.
Yeah.
Which comes into play here. So.
Yeah, it'd be really. If I ever got into Jeopardy, I'd probably do all right, as long as they didn't ask a bunch of math questions.
Yeah.
But on with the show.
Yeah, let's get started.
So, first of all, like we said in the trailer, but also in the introduction here, we're only discussing the first chapter of The Things They Carried by Timo'brien, and the first chapter is also called The Things They Carried. So we're only discussing one chapter for two big reasons. Yeah, one is because the first chapter of this book is by far the most interesting, and it's the one that really gets our brains pumping with ideas and stuff. But also because the whole book, it's not really like a traditional narrative. Like, really, the book is like a series of short stories that are linked together.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to discuss, like, we're better off, we'd be better off if we discussed like each chapter on its own as its own thing, as its own story, instead of trying to examine the book, because trying to break down a book that's organized in that way, it would go off in all kinds of different directions, and
it might be a little confusing.
Yeah, and some of the stories are told like out of order, like they're not organized chronologically. So sometimes, like, a person who is dead in one chapter, like later on, there'll be a story where that person is alive, because that one happened. Because chronologically speaking, even though it happens later in the book, it actually happens before the one chapter. It gets weird, but we'll get into that as we talk about the story, the book as a whole, and Timo'brien.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Tim. So his parents, his mom was a teacher and his dad was an insurance salesman, and they met during World War II. So I'd say he was a military brat. And then he was anti-war, maybe for that reason, but he got drafted, and instead of fighting it, he decided to protect the family name and just serve his time.
Yeah, his initial reaction was to flee up to Canada, like a lot of people did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so he served in Vietnam. The highest rank he got was sergeant, back when it actually meant something. Well, I mean, you can't spend your entire career as a sergeant now.
No, you really can't.
You used to...
You stick around too long and you get booted if you don't rank.
Yeah, you used to be able to spend your entire career as a freaking specialist. You didn't even need to become an NCO or commission or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of his early works, especially the story we're going to be talking about today, like really are drawn from his experiences in Vietnam. But he is a novelist and a short story writer. Some of his other notable works are In the Lake of the Woods, which was Time Magazine's best work of fiction in 1994. The book, The Things They Carried, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Critics Circle Award, as well as If I Die in a Combat Zone, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home, a Vietnam memoir.
Yeah.
That's a famous cadence that doesn't really get used anymore because it's too triggering. Like literally, they don't want to use any cadences that imply that you might actually get hurt in war. Yeah, or
I feel like all the ones that I did were about murdering somebody.
Well, it's not about
murdering somebody or getting killed. Being a hero.
No, they're okay with doing cadences where you kill somebody, but not where you're getting killed.
That's weird.
Yeah, they also don't want
My
ones.
feelings.
Yeah, they also don't want to do ones where, like they don't do "Oh Jody Boy" anymore. Because it implies that people are going to be cheated on in the military, and they don't want to make people any more depressed.
Yeah,
and it's like whoever makes these rules, clearly, they either have never been lower enlisted, or they've, or it's been so long that they've forgotten that really all you have as lower enlisted is dark humor.
That's true.
Caffeine, rage, and dark humor. That's what gets you through the day. But his most recent novel is July, and he's currently a professor and endowed chair at Southwest Texas State University, and where he teaches in the creative writing program. So
it's very fitting.
Yep. So, as we alluded to, the book as a whole is derived from his experiences in Vietnam. So we explained that the book is essentially it's a series of different short stories, all focused on this group of men in this unit. Each short story, each chapter is from a different person in the unit, their perspective of how they see things happening and going on, stuff like that. It's what makes the book. It's what makes the book good, but it also makes it really hard to break down because there's no narrative flow to it.
Because I know this particular story is supposed to be narrated by a fictional person with the same name of timo'brien, which is weird.
No. But the first chapter is called The Things They Carried, which is obviously the same title as the book.
And yeah, that actually threw me a little bit. I kept looking, is there another name for this entire book, or is it just the name for that chapter? No. And evidently it is both. They are both the same name.
Yeah, any books that do that where it's just a series of short stories linked it basically like this, there's no real narrative structure, it's just a bunch of short stories kind of plopped on top of each other like that.
Yeah, I'm not used to that.
Most of the time the title of the book is literally they just take one of the titles of the chapters and just throw it on the cover, whatever one they feel best represents the entirety of the book.
Okay.
So but the first chapter focuses on First Lieutenant Jimmy Cross, and he makes, so it's important to note that he is a first lieutenant, which means still very young in terms of being in the Army. It's the second lowest ranked commissioned officer. And so those guys, those guys in the Vietnam era, when officers actually still, actually led instead of letting NCOs do everything while they do the paperwork. Like those guys were still expected to lead, even though they didn't really, a lot of them, know what they were doing. Because a lot of officers get their commission from doing a ROTC program, in college, and a lot of the stuff that they learn is just theoretical. It's not really, it's not applicable, especially in a situation like Vietnam, where a lot of the time our soldiers were facing a just a completely irregular form of battle, and that was a big reason why Vietnam was such, such a shitstorm, because like we were trying to fight the war as if it was World War II, but that's not how, that's not how they fought. They hid in the jungle. They had underground. They had basically had huge underground networks. They didn't care about like borders on a map. They would go, like the Ho Chi Minh Trail led through like Laos and Cambodia, where they knew we couldn't go, but like they didn't care. It's one of those things. It's like completely offset values and military theories. Just not mixing and matching. And like when I teach the Vietnam War to my students, I try to explain to them like whenever we got the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong into an open battle, like we slaughtered them. All right, but a lot of the time we had to go looking for them in the jungle, and that's where they would get us a lot, because they could ambush us, because it's hard to keep formation in a jungle, especially during monsoon season. Where the rain, we had big old fat rain. We had rain that came up around our waist.
Hi, Forrest.
Forrest Gump references 2 episodes in a row.
Oh yeah. We did do one reason of why we're doing this story. Did we do the second one?
Yeah, the first reason was because we just find
I didn't do my second finger, so I wasn't sure.
Well, you weren't following along.
I was following along. I'm right here.
Well, then you were following from way back there.
Probably. You just didn't outright say
I didn't.
B.
Yeah, I didn't list it. I just kept going.
Yeah,
but
it's okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure our listeners are also understanding what's happening.
Yeah, we probably lost most of them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this isn't a work I've read or heard about.
Yeah.
Next podcast, please don't do that. We promise it's a good story.
Yeah, it is.
It might, if nothing else, it might interest you to, listen to the audiobook or something like that.
Yeah, it's a quick read.
Yeah,
the first chapter.
Yeah, I had to read / listen to the entire book for a class, and I loved it. But that's why I was like, no, we can't do the whole book. We only can do like 1 chapter or like 2 chapters if it's if we get one of the characters who has multiple chapters, we can do all their chapters. But like
when I pitched it, it was just the first chapter.
Yeah,
I did not pitch the full thing.
Yeah, but when
I pitched it, I didn't know it was a full book of a whole bunch of short stories. So
yeah, but
that's my bad and also my good.
No, but I was and yeah, but I informed you. I was like, yeah, sure, we can do the first chapter. You're like, what do you mean? It's a short story. I'm like, yeah, but like it's the first chapter of a whole book called
I didn't
called The Things They Carried.
Yeah. For my classes, like I had to do this story, a full review on it. So I didn't know there was more to it because I was never informed.
Yeah, it's.
I had to branch out and find out, and also hear it from you.
Yeah, it's a really good book. It's just really hard to break down in a video format without taking, 5 hours to like try to keep things
Organized.
yeah, organized, straight, whatever you want to. It doesn't lend itself well to a podcast format. But so do you want to get started with our brief but not very brief?
Okay, this is a lot more brief.
Yeah.
It does not take an hour and a half to get through this.
No, really, it shouldn't. Hopefully, but
I mean, the story is about Lieutenant Jimmy Cross and how he emotionally gets through war. And he creates this relationship in his head with a female friend, and it just kind of keeps him going.
I wouldn't say it's entirely in his head, but yeah, I mean,
they have some kind of cute moments, according to him. But
well, it's definitely
not enough to go off of.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
based
get
on
in
where he gets it.
We'll get into this deeper. It's definitely unrequited. I don't think it's like I don't think he's like constructing it in his head, where.
Well, he says, but that didn't happen, or that's not really what's going on. Like, he confirms that, this is not real, but it's helping me through.
Yeah, I mean, he fantasizes about a lot of stuff, like he imagines her walking on the Jersey Shore, so he imagines himself walking with her on the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
But it
he tries to escape reality.
Yeah, but so, but yeah, but while he's fantasizing about her, he's not thinking about the war, which is it's good for him on a personal psychological level, almost certainly, but it's not good if you're in command of other people and they're depending on your survival.
And there's a total of 17, I think that's including him, so 16 people he's in charge of.
Yeah.
So it's not good to zone out.
Yeah.
In a hot zone.
And he's leading them in combat too. That's that's crazy that, because like now a first and second lieutenant, they're a company XO, like an executive officer. They don't do anything other than paperwork. They don't lead anything. Like even the best XO or platoon commander, like they don't actually lead you. They tell you what to do, but like the NCO pretty much does everything, and they do the paperwork. I'm not like, and if there are any former commissioned officers or current commissioned officers or going to be commissioned officers who ever listen to this, I'm not saying that that's the way it should be. By all means, lead, take charge. Don't let the NCO run your lives. That's those are your soldiers. Your Marines, your sailors, your airmen, your Space Force people. Those are your Coast Guardians. Did I get them all?
I think so.
By all means, lead. Like if anything, the commissioned officers need to do more of the leading and less of the paperwork.
Yeah.
But what do I know? Nothing.
You're just some guy.
Yeah. But yeah, so overall the story is about, like, the reason it's called The Things They Carried is because it is about, like, a huge chunk of the story is devoted to Jimmy Cross describing all the things that he and the other members of his squad, his platoon.
Back then it was platoon.
Well, yeah, but like in your platoon, you still have firing squads. You're
set. I know you do.
I know. I'm explaining it to them, not to you. Like you have squads, and then you have fire teams within the squads, and then But
in this, like But
yeah, Jimmy Cross is in charge.
Said it was a platoon.
Yeah, he's in charge of the whole platoon. But yeah, he's describing what the things that they physically have to carry, but then also the
emotional and mental things that they have to carry.
Yeah. It's a double entendre there. That's what we in the biz call foreshadowing.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. But yeah, so and he also notates throughout, like whenever he lists a physical item, even down to a single round of ammunition, he notates how much it weighs.
Down to the ounce.
Yeah, like, he says like a 7.62 millimeter round weighs 10 ounces, fully loaded with black powder.
You just knew that off the top of your head? Nice.
I read the thing. It's in there.
Doesn't mean I remember that.
Oh, well.
I don't remember that detail.
And he says the M240 machine gun
Do it again.
weighs 20 pounds unloaded, and then I think he said 30 to 40 pounds fully loaded, which it was almost always fully loaded.
Impressive, sir.
But yeah, so, and that's kind of how you know that he's talking about a physical thing, because he actually notates the weight and sometimes the measurement and like how it has to be handled. But then like he'll say things like they shared the weight of memory. They took up what others could no longer bear. There's no numerical value to give to the burden of like trauma.
Yeah.
And things like that. So,
he'd probably know it if there was.
Yeah, he did not have a good time in Vietnam.
No, he did not.
In fact, very few people did.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have anything else on that?
It's just, he knows what the weight is because he's physically carrying it. So, like, your rucksack, you know what you need, you know what you don't need, you know what you're stuck carrying that you don't feel is necessary, but you still do it. Mm-hmm. And these guys carry things like their, the 28-pound mine detector. They know that they have to all share that burden and take turns carrying it. And it's probably only going to pick up, shrapnel. But instead of worrying about what it could possibly pick up, they're bringing it with them just as, that...
It's out of habit.
Yeah, or that mindset to feel safer, even though it might not work. Yeah. What if it does?
But yeah, so the story, like, in the story, even... it doesn't really, it's not really told, again, like a narrative. It's more told as if, like, somebody was asking Jimmy Cross about his time in the war as a whole, or, like, asked him, like, how did he deal with the burden of command or something like that. And he just kind of gives this, huge spiel of an answer to perfectly encapsulate what it means to him, to be in charge of other people and their lives. So like, there's not really, there is sort of a beginning, middle, and end to this chapter, but it's very diverting, but that's also because I think that also kind of represents how Jimmy Cross, kind of dealt with the war by diverting himself. He
definitely tried to get out of it emotionally. And when things kind of go south, he finally realizes he can't be that emotional anymore.
Mm-hmm. But so the chapter starts out with him and his platoon essentially getting ready to go out on patrol. Mm-hmm. So they're all getting their rucks together. And again, this is where Jimmy is notating everything that he and everybody else has to carry. But he's also giving us some character introductions, and all these different characters make appearances throughout the book. Most of them get their own chapters where it's from their perspective. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, like literally he's just saying like, we don't even know why we're rucking, but we're, why we're doing the hoof, but we're hoofing it. We don't know why we're going out here, but we have to. Yep. Essentially, they're just following orders. He and everybody else is just following orders. Like they're told that they have to, go explore this zone of the jungle, so they go explore this zone of the jungle. Mm-hmm. And when they find, when they find a hole that could be, that could be a hole that the Viet Cong use as part of their underground network. They there's only
investigate.
Yeah, they have to, but like the machine gunner Henry Dobbins, he's supposed to be like this massive human being, so he's the only one that doesn't have to get down on the hole and look. Everyone else,
no way to get that guy back out.
Yeah, everyone else draws straws, and basically they hang him up. So, and this is true, okay? And this is what makes the works of Tim O'Brien when he writes about Vietnam so great, is because again, all this is true. Like you couldn't, you had to take off your ruck. You couldn't, point your rifle down. Basically, all you had was, people had to put you in upside down into this hole, and all you had was a flashlight and a pistol. So if the Viet Cong are down there waiting for you, you're probably dead. Nobody wanted that job. That's why they had to draw straws.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes into detail about how essentially as they're rucking, as they're marching, they just drop stuff as they go on to make the march more comfortable, like rations. Toss them. They'll just grenades, they'll just light them off and toss them.
Yeah.
Not even at someone. They're just taking the weight off themselves so they don't have to carry it anymore.
And they know that there's going to be a resupply.
Yeah, they know what regular intervals they're going to get a resupply, so they know okay,
this is useless now.
Yeah.
I'm getting it again tomorrow.
Yep. So whatever is so whatever I keep what I need to sustain me until the next supply pickup, essentially.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then essentially they go back, but all the while Jimmy Cross, basically he just keeps zoning in and out. He's not even really in command. He's just doing what he thinks commanders need to be doing. He
randomly just gives him an order.
Yeah,
that they're already doing.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey guys, spread out."
Mm-hmm.
He's just trying to appear in charge.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, but for the most part, he's acting like he's one of the boys.
Yep.
He's one of the group, and because when he's not giving them an order, when they're just marching, he's just kind of in his own little world where he's thinking about this girl. Yeah, this girl Martha.
Oh, Martha. What does that mean? Why did you say that name? Find him. Save Martha.
Who's going to college? Who she and her exchange letters, and he's.
You just said she and her, by the way. Continue. She and her.
Well, now you got me all. Now,
he and she exchange letters.
Yeah, they exchange letters, and I don't know if I would go so far as to say that Jimmy is in love with her, but he puts her up on a pedestal.
He's infatuated.
Yes,
definitely. The definition of infatuated, that is Jimmy.
Yeah. And again, we'll go deeper into their relationship later.
Yeah, he just has this idea of who she could be for him.
Yeah. And she sent him a picture of herself and a pebble to use as a good luck charm that he puts in his mouth.
Yep, to taste where she's been.
Yep, and also
closer to her,
and to pretend that he's kissing her.
Yep, that is her tongue.
Yeah. But
that's not weird.
Yeah, he basically uses it to it's all the good things about her.
Yeah.
And
when he first introduces her into the part of the story, he's talking about licking the envelope where she licked.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's where he's at with her.
But all of a sudden, they get into a like, well, actually no. So before they get into a firefight, like they're just kind of, after they check a hole, this guy Ted Lavender, another guy in the platoon, he's everybody's best friend, and we'll explain why. Like they're they're pulling someone out of the hole that they just checked, and everyone's like kind of calmed down, like, okay, oh, we're good. And then Ted Lavender gets shot by a sniper.
You want to talk about how, like, the scenario? He just got done peeing and all that?
Yeah, I mean, he went to the bathroom, and when he was coming back,
He said he had taken a tranquilizer.
Yeah. Yeah, like...
And he died with tranquility.
Yeah. Like, they're like, he didn't feel a thing. He was so high. He was so high, it's fine. He didn't feel a thing. Good old Ted. Teddy.
Yep.
Ted, you're giving sad eye. It's the only eye I've got.
Good old Scrubs.
Yeah, that's a Scrubs reference for anybody who doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Ted in Scrubs, Ted is probably my favorite non-main character.
Yeah.
Every time he's on screen, I'm probably laughing.
I'm not a sad sack, am I?
Ted, your pen exploded.
Oh, oh.
It's, every single time I've only seen you laugh whenever he's on.
But
usually it's just an expression he's giving.
Guys, come on, I'm the only one giving the evil eye. We worked on this. Hey, Ted, you're giving sad eye.
It's all I've got.
I don't believe that.
But yeah, so Ted Lavender dies, and it kind of changes Jimmy Cross's outlook on things. Like, he realizes, like, oh, shit.
I haven't been doing my job. I've been zoned out, and they've been needing me.
Yeah, I'm the one that's supposed to be in charge here.
Oh, I'm such a shit.
What am I doing?
Yep, I'm going to take full blame of this. I'm going to get my stuff together.
Yeah, and he throws the pebble away, and he burns the pictures and the letters from Martha, and basically, and like when they get back to camp, like he changes his demeanor entirely. Like, he doesn't, like,
he goes from like their best friend to like their dad.
Yeah, like he starts giving orders in a flat, direct tone.
From now on, you will speak only when spoken to, and the first and last words out of your filthy sewers will be sir. Do you maggots understand that? Sir, yes, sir. Bullshit, I can't hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually ordering somebody, not like, okay, guys, well, we gotta go do this. Like,
yeah, you
nope.
know the routine. Let's get to it.
Yep. Like, nope. Jensen, you're doing this. Yep. Dobbins, you're doing this. Sanders, you're doing this.
Yep.
So, it's so again, it just changes his demeanor entirely. Like, he's determined to try to be a good leader for these guys.
Yeah, and he considers Martha a distraction, and he has to get rid of the distraction. No more zoning out and being away from his guys.
Yeah, and the reason why this is, for those who never served in the military, the reason this is also another big deal because there's a very good chance that as a second or as a first lieutenant, he's one of the youngest people in the platoon. Mm-hmm. Like, there's...
He said he was 24, but I don't know the ages of anybody else.
24? Yeah, I mean, he's probably older than all the privates and stuff like that, but, like, he's probably a lot young. He's probably about the same age as a bunch of the E4s.
Well, didn't it say a lot of them were specialists? I read that they're mainly specialists.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like,
they're not much younger than him, but they should be younger than him.
Well, I'm saying, like, the specialists, he's probably around the same age as, but like the sergeants, like the NCOs, he's probably younger than. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys have an issue taking orders from somebody younger than them, both in the military and in, like, the real world in general.
Yep.
So I'm not too big to say that I haven't been, that I've never had an issue with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so but yeah, so eventually, one of the last things that happens, really the last thing that happens is him like burning all the stuff. Like in terms of what happens chronologically, like one of the last things that happens is him burning all of her stuff, and giving orders to the guys. But like one of the last things that happens in the narrative, well, not in the narrative, but like in the chapter, is like this firefight that they get into. That like once they're everyone's like, is it over? Like seriously, it's kind of almost like out of like Tropic Thunder almost, where they're all just like poking their head up over stuff like, are we alive? Did we get them? It's like straight, or it might even be straight up out of Home Alone. Did I get him? Did I get him?
Did I get him? Did I get him?
And basically, they're all kind of like scared stiff. But then, who was it? Was it Dobbins that said that he almost shit himself?
What? We gotta go back home, man. Why? I pooped my pants.
I don't know, because I know that Cross says that not the Cross, but the narrative says that they all kind of back and forth depending on the mission, that they all kind of say that thing, and then somebody always rebuttals with the same thing.
Yeah, like eventually.
I would shoot myself. Oh, well, you didn't.
Yeah, whenever they get into a fight, like one of them always breaks the tension.
Yeah.
Someone says something like, one of the examples is, I almost shit myself, or another one said, almost cut me a new asshole.
It seems like they say kind of consistently. They know what they're going to say, and they always laugh.
And once it eases the tension, like everyone else feels like they can laugh about it too. Like there needs to be that initial ice break, and then everyone else can laugh about it. And then if somebody dies, they're all just like, there it is. Like, and then as soon as one person says it, everyone, like, they're all like, there it is, there it is, there it is. There it absolutely is. They add more cuss words into it that I don't want to. We're already gonna get dinged for saying already. But so yeah, like in in that instance, really goes to show kind of like the kind of stuff that these guys just have to get used to. Like it becomes part of their daily lives to just have to fight and survive and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But
which also circles back to having to have dark humor in order to survive mentally, emotionally, all that.
Yeah. So yeah, like that's about it for as far as the story goes for the first chapter,
which was actually kind of brief.
Yeah. Again, like it might sound meandering and confusing, and like you might be sitting there thinking like, well, what even happened? Like you didn't even give me like a plot or anything. And I don't know, like I said, like there's not really a precise beginning, middle, and end with this. Like it's like I said, it's really seems like it's meant to be the character Jimmy Cross just remembering his time in Vietnam. So do you have anything to add about the story, like, or that did we miss anything, do you think?
Not really. I mean, I feel like we hit everything minus like the strange things that they carry. And
yeah, we'll talk about that when we talk. Yeah, when we talk about the characters.
Okay. Do you want to get into the characters, or?
Yeah, that's what's next.
Thank you for saying that. Do you want to? As in, can you now?
Yeah, now's good.
Proceed with the chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll? More like borophyll.
Chlorophyll? More like borophyll.
Getting there.
Wow. Truth comes out. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. So, obviously, the main character of this chapter of the book and this short story is First Lieutenant Jimmy Cross. Not much to say other than what's already been said. He's, he doesn't want to be in Vietnam. His feelings a lot of what he thinks and feels probably reflects
What Tim feels.
what Tim O'Brien felt, because Tim absolutely hated the Vietnam War, still does. Just thinks it was a colossal waste of time, money, lives, effort, all that stuff. And I do not disagree. But a lot of I can see a lot of Jimmy's feelings basically just being a reflection of Tim's based on what Tim says. Tim has said in interviews and stuff. So obviously the biggest thing about Jimmy Cross, as we talked about, is, Martha. Now, Martha, we have listed as a character, but she doesn't really officially, in person appear. Like, she appears in memories and fantasies of Jimmy. And, again, I wouldn't go so far as to say he's in love with her, but like Aly said, a deep infatuation, definitely. Like, he has this idealized version of her in his mind where
They're in love and what have you.
Yeah, they're in love. They're going for walks on the beach. She's a virgin and she's saving herself for him and all this stuff. And it's an ideal that no person could live up to. And but the thing is, Jimmy, you also see, is kind of completely aware of this. Him and Martha go on a few dates, but he puts his hand on her knee and she just kind of looks at him why?
Yeah.
And so he pulls his leg off, but he still remembers it fondly because he got to touch her knee.
Yeah.
And then they've kissed, but there was no passion in it for her, so yeah, he's aware that this love is unrequited. She doesn't feel the same way about him as he does about her.
Well, he believes he didn't really man up enough for her to give it a shot. So he's kind of kicking himself, I should have done this. I should have done that. We would be together right now if I could have just done this and, actually gone through with it.
That's true.
Instead of backing off.
That's true. And then also, you get the feeling that Martha probably thinks Jimmy's a pretty good guy. Because she's willing to go on dates with him. She's
willing to write him letters while he's overseas.
And send pictures of herself. It's, but some people might read it and think she's leading him on. I don't think that. I think I think she's he's a good guy.
She is the only real connection to home, and so she stands by that to help him get through it.
Yeah. But again, it's just this idealized version of her that he has that even if he got her to agree to be with him, she could never live up to the vision of her that he had in his mind.
Yeah, she's just gonna disappoint him.
Yeah, not even because she's a bad person. We don't know. We never actually meet Martha. Just because Jimmy has her so high up on so high up on a pedestal, there's no way she could amount to the vision of Martha that is in his head. So and do you think that covers Jimmy and Martha, or is there anything else you want to say about those two?
That's pretty spot on.
Okay. So this chapter, you also get an introduction to many of the other characters in the platoon that also make appearances throughout the book, and some get their own chapters and all this stuff. And when we, talk about them, they're going to be, they're also going to be part of how Jimmy like notates them in his brain as like the personal items that they carry along with them in their rucksack. So first we have Dave Jensen, and the big thing that Jimmy picked out about him is that he's kind of like the clean freak, practices almost too much field hygiene, where like everyone else is like, you don't have to like bathe, you don't have to wipe yourself down every day.
He brings soap that he got from a bed and breakfast, I think it was.
Yeah.
Was that Austria? You know, with an A. But yeah, like he got it while they were out, and like that's the most important thing he wanted to bring with him was soap. He wanted to have that with him, and it has like a fancy smell.
Yeah, like the soap you're supposed to use, like
It's supposed to be fragrance free, so you can't be identified.
Yeah, and even if you, most people just use like wipes, like you literally just wipe yourself with like body wipes. Don't even use soap anymore. Yeah.
And all kinds of other stuff, toothpaste, all of it.
Yeah.
A little weird.
Yeah. Next we have Henry Dobbins. Henry Dobbins.
Probably was Harry.
Yeah. Henry Dobbins, we mentioned him before. He's just this massive human being. He's the one that has to carry around the machine gun all the time because it's so heavy. Honestly, I imagine him as being basically Arnold Schwarzenegger's Dutch in Predator.
Yeah.
Except he doesn't talk like this.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
Stick around.
It's pretty good.
But yeah, so Henry carried, Jimmy noted that Henry always carried extra rations, so he could eat more, because again, massive human being. And he also noted he was particularly fond of peaches and heavy syrup and pouring that over some pound cake.
So much calories. Big guy.
Yeah, I mean, the Army it's not real food. It's just calories made to look like food.
It's true. The thing that he most associated him with was his girlfriend's pantyhose being wrapped around his neck as a comforter.
Yeah. Which, look, some people might find weird, but it's no more weird than some of the other stuff these guys are carrying. It's no more weird than Jimmy putting a pebble in his mouth and pretending it's Martha's tongue. Okay?
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
It is what it is. All right? You do what you got to do, to mentally survive the stuff. All right? Like, I'm not condemning it. I'm not condoning it. All right? Yeah, it's pretty weird, but,
You do you. Just leave me out of it.
Yeah. Mitchell Sanders is the radio operator. So this guy,
That radio's heavy.
well, yeah, back then the radio's friggin' massive.
Was it like 30 pounds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he basically had to carry that, along with his ruck, and a standard ruck is like 60 pounds, something like that, so, and then the radio, problem being a radio operator is like you're a target all the time. Someone sees you operating that radio, you're like, they get a good shot at you. You're
Kill comms.
Yeah. But Mitchell, he carried around brass knuckles, because I guess he's a 1950s gangster. Like, yeah, we're gonna come to Vietnam, she, and punch you in the face, she. But I guess he's also so the weird thing that Mitchell carries around is condoms. And you asked me why he carried condoms along with him in the jungle or in Vietnam. And I'm like, well, during the Vietnam War, lots of Vietnamese people were very, very poor because we were destroying their country. So a lot of Vietnamese women sold their bodies for American money.
Well, I mean, why would he carry it on his person when he's literally like shooting at other people? Like, why would
because
he be
they
carrying that with him whenever he was having like downtime or
well,
something?
they make stops in villages and stuff. You know, like it's not just jungle. You know, they do stop in villages and stuff. Like they burned one village to the ground because that's the village where the shot that killed Ted Lavender came from. Yeah, you remember that? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like the biggest thing in the whole entire story. So yes, I do remember it.
Yeah. So Norman Bowker, he carried a diary, but he also didn't he also carry like a fully illustrated New Testament? Pretty sure that was Norman.
I thought that was the Native American.
No, the Native American carried a hatchet. Oh, yeah, you're right. My bad. I'm stupid.
No, you're not.
So
It's a lot of people to keep straight.
So yeah, I mean, there's nothing really. So some of these guys, like, they're just introduced. You're not really told like much about them. Like Norman Bowker, like the only thing Jimmy really notes about him is that he carries a diary everywhere. Mm-hmm. That's really it. Rat Kiley, he carries comic books. Brandy, the alcohol, not the pop artist from the 90s.
Vietnam. Keep going.
See what I deal with here, people?
Saying dumb things.
So unsupportive. Mm-hmm. Brandy and M&M's candy. Now, I've had brandy and I've had M&M's, and nothing about the taste of either of those makes me think that they go well together. Mm-hmm. So,
I'm sure he's not popping and drinking.
Yeah. So, maybe. Rat Kiley, you do you, man. Mm-hmm. I imagine that he's called Rat because he goes into MREs to steal the candy, because that's called, like in the army, that's called rat effing. I'm not gonna say the full word, but you get the picture. Mm-hmm. Like that's called rat effing an MRE, like going in, taking out all the good stuff, leaving the stuff that nobody wants, like the pound cake or the stale bread or whatever. So I imagine that's why he's called Rat.
Could be. Seems
he might be. It's been a while since I read the whole book. But so next is Kiowa, who is he's a Native American and a devout Baptist who carries around a fully illustrated New Testament.
That he got from his father.
Yeah, and who taught Sunday school in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And the other cool thing that he carries around is his grandfather's feathered hatchet. Mm-hmm. Now Kiowa feels like he gets treated poorly by the platoon because he's Native American.
I mean, they definitely give him crap and call him an Indian.
Yeah.
Or a dumb Indian, I think it was.
Any reference to dumb Indian is made towards Kiowa. But I also think it's kind of made about that like nursery rhyme, 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians. Do you remember that from a kid? You didn't have a childhood. She doesn't. She doesn't watch She doesn't know any cartoons, people. Any. Am I lying?
I know some cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
I pull up some all the time.
Yeah, for our daughter.
Yeah. Not
for you.
Because I know what they are. I've heard of them.
You've heard of them. I had to, she did.
This isn't about me. We'll talk about me a different time. Maybe in our bonus features, Spotify's subscription.
She didn't know that Popeye's arch nemesis was Bluto.
So, continue.
Tragic. But yeah, there's this old nursery rhyme. It's
1 little, 2 little, 3 little.
Yeah, and I think they're referencing that as well, because it's basically like them referencing the fact that, like, they're just all trying to be good. All of them are trying to be good little Indians for the government and just go follow the orders. Mm-hmm. Next is Lee Strunk. He carried a slingshot, which he referred to as his weapon of last resort. Mm-hmm. Again, not much is said about Lee other than that. But again, he does get his own chapter later on. So the last character that we're introduced to in the first chapter is Ted Lavender, who we mentioned gets shot. Now, we saved till now to really dig into his character because he's everybody's best friend because he's the platoon drug dealer.
Hey, how you doing? Good seeing you. Hey, got something for you, man. Hey, look at here, man. This bud's for you. Wow. Mm-hmm.
And there are tons of references throughout the chapter about people in the squad, smoking dope. And that was a huge thing during Vietnam. Like, lots of guys, lots of soldiers, American soldiers over there were getting high all the time. Not just like marijuana, amphetamines,
they wanted
heroin.
to escape where they were forced to go.
Yeah, like whatever they could get their hands on, they were doing over there. And Ted Lavender is like the platoon dealer. Like he's got the drugs. Like he has the he has freaking tranquilizers. Mm-hmm. All right, like that's some heavy stuff. Like he deals regular dope to everyone else, but he takes tranquilizers for himself because he is like he's kind of like he admits to himself that he's kind of a coward. Mm-hmm. Like he's probably drafted, didn't want to be there, but he's making money on the side, by dealing drugs. Mm-hmm. And while pretty much the whole platoon is investigating a VC hole, Ted goes in to take a pee, and when he comes back, like he's still zipping up his pants, and he gets shot in the head. And so one key phrase that keeps popping up throughout is basically whenever somebody dies, they're just like, there it is. There it is. There it is. Mm-hmm. There it is. There it is. There it absolutely is. Mm-hmm. And so Ted dies, and they all note how, like, tranquil he looks.
Which we did mention earlier.
It's pun on tranquilizer because he was high when he got shot, and they're all like, hey, he probably didn't even feel a thing. He's fine. He's fine. But then they burn the village that that shot him to the ground as vengeance, which happened a lot, unfortunately. If a squad of soldiers were going through a village and that village made them mad, they just burned it to the ground. It's not a good thing. But yeah, and after he dies, pretty much everyone roots through his stuff to basically take his dope and smoke it. Mm-hmm. So well,
that is until Jimmy kind of comes to realize that he needs to be the leader, and he ends up burning it.
Once Jimmy decides to become a real leader, prevents them from getting high anymore. So what are some things you like, didn't like, whatever order? Both, neither? What are you going to do?
I don't think I didn't like anything. I think it was an overall pretty good story that moved along all the way through. Like, there was no slow parts, there was no fast parts. It was just same pace all the way through. So, no complaints from me. Things I liked, I feel like the writing was pretty dang good. Like, I felt engaged throughout, and the word usages at times really got me. And I feel like you thought the same thing.
Yeah. Really, the only thing I kind of don't like and about not just this chapter but the book as a whole is that there's no real narrative structure.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would appreciate more of a story. But I also understand that that's not what Tim is going for. Like, he's going for, like...
This is what I saw.
Yeah, he's going for extreme realism. Like, honestly, this whole book, it reminds me of, like, Full Metal Jacket meets Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how Saving Private Ryan, it focuses on one squad.
Mm-hmm.
And those characters clearly know each other really well. They've been fighting, doing the same stuff together. They're like, literally, they're as close as family in that movie. Even if they go off, when they, had they lived, spoiler alert for Saving Private Ryan, if you're one of the 8 people that haven't seen it. But yeah, if they had lived, like, they might not have seen each other ever again for the rest of their lives, but they still would have felt that closeness because of what they went through. Mm-hmm. And that's what you get. You get that same feeling in this, not just this chapter, but the book.
Feel their camaraderie.
Yeah. But then also combined with, like, that sort of, like, the almost cynical brutality of, from Full Metal Jacket, how they make jokes about, they turn, killing Vietnamese people into, like, a joke or almost like something that they want to do, not something that they have to do. Mm-hmm. So just like I said, that brutal cynicism that Full Metal Jacket presents, combined with that camaraderie and there's still camaraderie in Full Metal Jacket, definitely. It's just, but like the core of the story in Saving Private Ryan is the camaraderie, that band of brothers. Mm-hmm. So that's what this story, the things they carried and the whole book reminds me of. But yeah, I still would have liked, more of a narrative structure, but it's still great. It doesn't like take anything away. I don't think it's just something, maybe that's just my brain. But again, as a historian, I love the realism. The dark humor and coping mechanisms, that's something that anybody who's spent 5 minutes in the military understands. Or
really anybody who has any form of trauma.
Yeah, that's true too. But also, like you can tell Tim O'Brien has very strong feelings about Vietnam. He hated being there. He hates when people try to make it sound like a good war or an honorable war in the same vein as like World War II. He's famous for like a quote he said about his, like he said, my hometown, middle of nowhere, that's, that was just, covered in blind ignorance about the war, just wanted to, basically, yay America, let's go beat the commies. The kind of, he says those, he said, I'm not saying this, he said that those are the kind of people that got us into the war. He said that those are the kind of people that like can't spell Hanoi if you spotted them 3 vowels. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, Hanoi only has 5 letters, 3 of which are vowels. So it's actually a pretty good joke. And Hanoi was the capital of South Vietnam. So capital of North Vietnam was Ho Chi Minh City.
Alrighty then.
I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong.
I don't know. So
I know you don't. I'm just saying that for anybody who's listening. I might be wrong about that. It's late.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, it's getting late. I might be wrong about that. I know the capital of North Vietnam was renamed Ho Chi Minh City, but I'm not sure if it was renamed from being Hanoi. But it's getting late, so but yeah, like I really like the story. It's one of those things where there's not a lot, like, like you get the sense that the story takes place over the course of like a couple weeks, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not a lot to the story itself, but there's just so much you can talk about.
Yeah.
It's not dense, but it's very, it gives you a lot to think about in such a short page counts, short word count, all that stuff.
I mean, it was a decent read, but yeah, like it stuck with me. So whenever I presented it to him, I knew he would be on board, and long and behold, he was. I know that I wanted to address some stuff. Like I went through a lot of reviews for this book, and there's people who they overall like the story, but they don't understand like where they're at, like why they're there and what's going on. Like why do they feel the way they're feeling? What are they going through? Why is this happening to them? Like I'm sure some of them just have never been in a war zone and that, or heard about or watched anything with the war zone, so they're not 100%, or they just don't know their history. And then I know that Tim also said some of it is fictional. Like his character that he plays as the narrator, like he is fictional, so he doesn't want to say what's actually real and what's not. But I know a lot of people were complaining that, it's not, something that they completely understand.
Yeah, even when it's not real, it's very realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can totally believe it.
Yep.
But like as far as like people not knowing their history, like
that's all over the place right now.
Yeah, I mean, like when I'm teaching my students, like I teach U.S. history currently, and like once we get done with World War II, there's very little time left before they basically before they tell us to stop teaching and start prepping them for end of year exams. Mm-hmm. So I have next to no time to cover hardly anything.
That truly matter too.
Yeah, about the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
Like so
they don't know a lot of things that they should know.
Yeah, and so in like high school, it's I didn't learn a lot about the Vietnam War. Well, really, I mean, I didn't start getting. I knew the Vietnam War happened, mm-hmm. but like I didn't start learning things about it until high school. But I didn't really start learning like in-depth material until college. Mm-hmm. And I've read a lot about it. I know Ken Burns gets a lot of flack, but I think I think he made like a 10-part documentary series like he did about baseball. He did that, but about Vietnam. And it's like, even if, Ken Burns isn't always accurate or likes to dramatize things a lot, sometimes brings on people whose accuracy can't always be trusted, but like it's still, it's a good starting place. Like it gives you people to look up, both authors and soldiers and stuff like that, and and commanding officers who fought and stuff like that. So probably one of the best history books I ever read about the Vietnam War we have on our bookshelf. It's called The Elephant and the Tiger. It's based on a quote from Ho Chi Minh, the leader of North Vietnam, mm-hmm. Who basically, he equated us to an elephant, like this slow, this kind of slow lumbering creature that like, it's extremely powerful, but like, but basically he said that like a tiger cannot kill an elephant unless the elephant stops walking. And that's essentially what we did. Because, like, we call it the Vietnam War, but Congress never declared war. Like, we haven't declared war on anybody since World War II. Korea, Vietnam, both Iraqs, Afghanistan, Kosovo, back in the Clinton administration. Like, those are all, like, basically police actions, or the various presidents just sending troops into places without congressional approval, but then Congress just gives them money and support anyway without officially declaring war. It doesn't make any sense, but that's how history works. But yeah, so like the Vietnam War was considered a police action, and so the country of Vietnam was separated between North and South, and essentially, like, most of the fighting that we did was either along that DMZ, that border between North and South, or like in the jungles of South Vietnam. Like, we bombed the crap out of North Vietnam, but we never really sent soldiers into North Vietnam other than, like, you know, black ops types of stuff, you know, that the general public doesn't know about, you know, that got declassified with the Pentagon Papers. But, you know, that's essentially the elephant and the tiger analogy. That's essentially what happened. Like, we stopped moving, so we allowed ourselves to be, you know, to be killed by, you know, by tigers. And, you know, and it's, you know, like I said, the book, I forget the name of the author off the top of my head, but it's easily the best book about the history of the Vietnam War that I've ever read. If you know of any others, or know of any good ones, you know, by all means, let me know, and I'll add it to my ever-growing reading list. But yeah, so I'm not even sure what my original point was why I started talking about that, but it's all good. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like that's why but the story's great because, like, you know, or even like the part where they're just ditching their stuff to make the ruck easier because they know they're gonna get resupplied anyway. Like, I'm sure that happened, but that just goes to show, like, the total, like, the amount of waste that the military industrial complex goes through. Like, I've seen it personally, you know, like when I was in Korea, we had vehicles that were completely gutted. Like, all the stuff that made the vehicle work was completely taken out, you know, but we still had to do quote unquote motor maintenance on them. Like, even though they were just husks of vehicles. And, like, whenever it got brought up, like, oh, what should we just scrap these vehicles? They never would, because then those vehicles get taken off the maintenance budget. And so so we had to continue to run maintenance on, you know, or on dead vehicles, essentially. Like, you know, that's
time, money, and resources.
Yeah, it's the kind of stuff, you know, that the military is great at. You know, if you're, but and that was a big thing in Vietnam. We never ran out of, you know, bombs or bullets, but it didn't matter, you know, because the Vietnamese, you know, who'd have thunk they knew their country better than we did. You know, and they, like, all those bombs ever did with, you know, because, like, basically the Navy and the Air Force and the Army Air Corps would bomb the crap out of, like, you know, of a grid of jungle, but because they were hiding underground, it didn't do anything. All that did was tell the Vietnamese soldiers that eventually that's where American soldiers would be marching through. You know, and you know, it got to a point where guys who spent a lot of time over in Vietnam, like it got to a point where they could almost sense an ambush about to happen. Like they literally told guys, like, if you feel like an ambush is about to happen, it's probably about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, but yeah, oh right, yeah. As far as like the teaching of history, like people just don't like a lot of people just don't understand like why we were even in Vietnam.
Yep.
You know, and like for no good reason. Like we were there to fight communism, supposedly, but like, hey, in my opinion, if someone wants to make the stupid decision to convert to communism, like, let them. You can vote your way into communism, but you gotta shoot your way out.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it was just, it was this idea of, all these, the idea of the domino theory, that all these Southeast Asian countries were so vulnerable to communism because of Russia and China.
Yep.
That if one fell to communism, that they would all fall. And because Laos and Cambodia were also, like, Cambodia just had a communist revolution or around that time period. And, Vietnam was obviously having one too. And basically, we wanted to do for Vietnam what we did for South Korea, which is, which essentially meant create two different, countries and stuff. But like, problem was that the South Vietnamese government was extremely corrupt and almost as authoritarian as the communists up north. But the South Vietnamese military, like, even though we were training them and supplying them, like, they didn't actually want to fight that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as soon as we left, like, the South Vietnamese military just completely collapsed. Like, they didn't actually want to fight against the communists because, they didn't like, their government. They didn't feel that strongly about their own country enough to actually want to fight for it. So, but yeah, so in the reviews, like, and we're not talking about like when we say reviews, we're talking about like regular people reviews, not like book critic reviews and stuff like that. Those,
yeah.
So that's why some people don't know. I assume most book critics are educated enough to know about Vietnam, but a lot of regular people just don't know because, like, honestly, it's such an embarrassing, it's just a massive black eye, for us, one of many, that, like, a lot of, a lot of media doesn't want to talk about it. Not a ton of movies are made about it, because it wasn't a good war. Mm-hmm. We didn't win, like, I mean, there was a lot of movies about Vietnam made in the 80s, but since then, there's Tigerland starring Colin Farrell, We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson. There's probably others, but like those are the big ones that stick out in my mind. And Tigerland wasn't even that good, or at least I'm not going to say it wasn't that good. It just wasn't that big.
Yeah, it wasn't that big.
I mean, there are more movies being made. There are more movies now being made that are looking at like World War I now than Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Because World War I now at this point it's like so old it's new. You got the remake. The Netflix just remade All Quiet on the Western Front, and then you had that movie 1917.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Spielberg did War Horse, a few years ago. When I say a few years ago, I mean like 10, something like that. But yeah, it's so. A lot of people just don't know about Vietnam, and again, the way the school year is structured, like, and the way curriculums are structured, like, I'm not allowed to, like, just skip stuff that I don't think is important, because honestly, the thing is, like, even if I think personal thing about me, I hate Industrial Revolution stuff. I think it's boring. But maybe one of those kids thinks it's really interesting. All the stuff that gets invented, all the effects it has on, the country and the economy, and maybe that sparks them getting into history or whatever. That's fine, but that's my thing. I can't choose to skip it just because I don't like it. I can't skip things, just because I think they're not important. But then it leaves me very little time to talk about stuff that I think are really important. So I don't really get to the Cold War or the Civil Rights Movement or Vietnam or just so much important stuff that happens after World War II that I just don't have the time to get to. And but if
really sucks.
but if I was able to, like, I'd have them read I'd probably I'm not sure I would have them read this whole short story, this whole chapter, but maybe part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's
it was pretty long.
Yeah. But also it's just but it's a good way of summing up sort of Vietnam in kind of a nutshell.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's everything, unless you have something else.
No, I did a whole lot of talking. I was hoping you'd have something. So.
Nope, I have nothing.
All right. Well, so it took us a minute to decide to do this, but we already have our next video planned. We are going to be doing.
Shh! Don't give it away just yet.
Why not?
Don't give it away.
Why not?
No.
Why not?
No.
We want to get them excited.
You just have to stick around and find out what it is.
It's a good one. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too.
But, so since she's not letting me give you, I can't give you anything. I guess that's where we'll stop this. So please comment, like, follow, share, subscribe, rewatch. Even if you don't actually watch it, just hit play and like leave the room. So it counts as a view.
It doesn't bother you.
Yeah. So it counts as a view.
Yeah.
And just loop it. Just
just continue.
Yeah.
Go to work. Have a plan.
Yeah. Don't all of our videos.
Yes.
But yeah, I did all the things right. Like, share, subscribe.
Yeah, that's it. Keep liking us, keep following, and help us grow.
Yep.
Share with your friends.
Until next time, this is opinionated.
It's opinionated.
Well, it's one person's opinion.
Still the best opinion.
Mm-hmm. I'm Howie.
And I'm Allie.
Bye.
It's how the cookie crumbles.
Oh yeah, I forgot. That's how that's
how
the way the cookie crumbles.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah, yeah, because that's because he does it with Walter Cronkite. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.